Hello, good morning. Thank you for watching Elise Makes a Bunch of Videos. I wanted to do another work themed video. So in the last one, I was talking about my most recent jobs in New Zealand. Yeah. And then previous to that, I was in Australia, but I wasn't working. And on the way over, I stopped in Hawaii for 1 month where I was doing work exchange in the North Shore, kind of near where Elvis used to live, seasonally. But before that, I was back in Canada and I was working for this woman that did accounting for various clients, but mainly for one client that was Moby Maps. And they did those like tourist maps with all the advertisements around the edge. So we did all invoicing and stuff for them. But at the same time, I was also working at a retirement village or independent living facility, as it was called, which is just like a bunch of apartments that are all set up together for retired people who are still able to more or less do everything they need to on their own, but it just had housekeeping and dinner included in the rent, so that yeah, once a week we would clean the apartments for the residents, and that's what I was doing. So that was like part-time as well. And then before that, I was also very shortly working at a flower shop in Sydney, Canada, which was very close to where my mom is now living and was currently renovating her place, which was where I was staying. Yeah, so that's pretty much the jobs that I had last time I was in Canada, which was maybe like 7 months the whole time. And then previous to that, I was in Mexico, Honduras mainly, and a little bit of Guatemala in the middle. And I was doing like a work exchange at a hostel in Puerto Escondido in Oaxaca for almost a month, I think. So I wasn't getting paid for that, but I was staying there for free breakfast. Yeah, so that was all right. And then prior to that, I was in Canada for a little bit, but I wasn't really working. I did a work exchange on Quadra Island. I have a few videos from there, actually. And then I was going to go up north, like way north of Vancouver Island, to do another one. But I decided not to at the last minute. It was sort of mixed reviews, really hard to schedule around. There was no cell phone reception and no internet at the place. So if I went up there, I'd be completely disconnected from everything. It's a little bit hard to plan stuff in that way. And then I also volunteered at Pearson College, which is part of the International College World Foundation. I can't remember what it's called, but anyways, they have different campuses around the world. And that is one in Canada, in Langford. So I was there, I think, for 3 weeks, and that was just for room and board, but then I ended up staying on the Race Rocks Islands as a eco warrior was the name of the position. Basically just making sure the houses on the island were all good. Checking on the generator, the desalinator, checking salination levels, more or less documenting the wildlife that was there on a daily basis. Part of a marine reserve on the south end of Vancouver Island, but it's run through this Pearson College. Someone went away for like a funeral, I think, so I ended up replacing them for 1 week, and that was sort of paid. It was $100 stipend per day, but totally unplanned. It was just a last minute sort of thing. Yeah, and then previous to that was my little continental Europe unplanned trip thing. And I don't have many videos from there, I don't think, but anyway, like of me actually talking. I think I have a lot of little snippets of stuff, but not like little proper vlogs. But yeah, at the beginning of that, I was in northern Italy in a place called Porcia, and I was working. I wasn't really working. I was staying at a homestay, which was a family with a young son. I think he was 5, 6, maybe, and a daughter that was like just turning 13. And the mom just wanted to practice English and have her daughter practice English as well. So I wasn't actually doing much. But I was staying with them for a little bit, 2 weeks maybe. And that's just north of Venice. So it's like on the Slovenian border. And then prior to that, I was in the UK with my 2-year working holiday visa, which I wasted a couple months of, or 1 month of. Yeah, but that whole trip, I ended up working at the H&M contact center, which I've talked to you about previously in videos. So I was answering phone calls and emails, mainly from Ireland and the UK, but also my section, my team, answered queries from Greece, Lithuania, Estonia, and one other place that I can't remember. Slovenia, maybe? Anyway, so I did that for almost a year, and that was quite good. They're really good at keeping their employees like happy. That was sort of a thing. I think it's like a Swedish thing. Anyway, but at the very beginning of when I got to the UK, I did like a whole circuit where I was set to volunteer through WWOOFing, Worldwide Organic Farming, or whatever it is. So I had my first one in Wales, Northern Wales, the Anglesey Yurt and Teepee people. I was there, I think, for 2 weeks. That was my very first WWOOFing, and then they told me about HelpX, which I ended up looking into a little bit later. So I popped over to Ireland and did a little bit 2-week tour thing, then ended up in, I'm trying to remember which one I did first now. I'm pretty sure I went to the Lacan College first, which is in like Templepatrick outside Belfast in Northern Ireland. And then I ended up at Breckenhill, which is also not very far from Belfast. And they do wedding events and children's, what do you call them? Group activities, teamwork activities and stuff. Because I've got this great big section with like forest and a lake, and so they've got set up like paintball and like all these things. And they've also got us like a small personal little farm thing that I was helping with too. And what else? And then I end up over in Scotland or hadn't really planned what I was going to do for that month. So I ended up volunteering in Oban at the Oban Backpackers, which is run by Mac Backpackers, and they have, I think, 7 different hostels in Scotland, maybe 8, I can't remember now. But because they're all like in the same company, I was able to later on go back and work for one of their hostels in Edinburgh, the Royal Mile Backpackers, and the Fort William Backpackers at the end. And they also run their own tours, so I ended up doing one of the tours for free, which is quite good. I ended up going to Isle of Skye and Inverness. Yeah, so that was that. It's a bit out of like linear order now, but somewhere in between that, I went down to Cornwall and I was working at a co-op farm there for quite a few hours. Like it was like full-time, like over 40 hours a week, but we weren't getting paid, and they were real stingy about the food, and it was pretty cold in the house, so it wasn't really great exchange. But anyway, Cornwall, no wintertime, November, collecting potatoes and whatnot. So that was interesting. And then I ended up in Devon for a little short time at a, I think it was called Penny Lane. Anyway, it was a Beatles themed hostel, sort of, run by an Irish guy who was a bit of a dick. And he was constantly trying to get staff in and then telling them they didn't have enough he didn't have enough hours for them, and charging them rent, even though that wasn't the agreement. So that's why I left there. And ended up going to, well, I did a few days in Dublin. I went to go visit someone over New Year's, whatever. And then I ended up in Liverpool in January, volunteering at the Everton Backpackers, which is probably like one of the messier party hostels in Liverpool. I don't know if it still exists. It almost burnt to the ground at some point. So, and it's in one of those row houses buildings, but then half of the buildings on that row are vacant, so it's real sketchy. Anyway, Everton. But I stayed there for like almost 3 months, and I was working at the Subway restaurant on the night shift mainly, so it's like 11 p.m. till 7 in the morning usually, so that was pretty interesting. And then I ended up in April, I think we went to Japan. I met my mom there to visit my brother who's still living there, and then I went to Bali for a few weeks, and then I flew back into London and went to Liverpool for a few days, and then eventually made my way to Edinburgh, which is where I worked eventually for H&M. But at the beginning I ended up getting this cafe job on the like main street, and I was real not good at that. I'm like horrible at front of house jobs. So it was just very desperate that I just took it. I worked there for a few weeks, not very many hours, but it was like something just to get into the job market. I don't know. And then I ended up getting this job for this place. I'm trying to remember what it was called now. It had a great name. Anyway, it'll come to me later when it's not helpful. But I worked at, it was like a punk rock venue and pub. And weirdly, it had like a weird Canadian theme happening behind the bar, which I wasn't 100% sure why that was. But anyways, I used to go in with one other guy in the mornings after, clean the whole place. And they also had like a studio upstairs. If there was bands playing, then they'd stay there. So we'd clean that too. And that usually took like maybe 2 hours. So I did that for maybe like a week. But then I got the H&M job and was like, it's a lot more money, it's so much easier, and the hours are like a lot easier and more set. And then I also I wasn't drinking at the time, so it was like not really any benefits to working at a pub. So I was like, nah. But yeah, I think that encapsulates all the jobs that I had. While I was in Devon, I did do a couple gigs through a temp agency. I worked at a rugby match at one of the drink kiosks. I wasn't interacting with people, I was just pouring drinks and getting them ready for the other people to sell, because obviously everyone goes during the break times in the game and then like piles in and gets like tons of drinks, and then like it gets quiet again. But yeah, so I did do that. And I also did like, they sent me to this place where I was like a cook at a senior's home, which was really interesting because I did my first beef roast, Sunday roast. And then I was like, okay, so I had like a recipe book, but I was just like, right, so these are old English people, so I'm going to make it perfect, and then I'm going to leave it in for an extra 25 minutes so that it's overdone, because that's how they want it. Yeah, so I did a few shifts there. But yeah, I think that encapsulates all the jobs that I've had since my trip to the UK. So probably in the next video I will do prior to that, which will be probably easier, I think. Anyway, deal with that when we get there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this very, very long video, and I will catch you next time. Peace.